All right, looks like we are live. Welcome everybody to the 27th episode. Well, I can't believe it's 27 now. I remember when it was the first, like a year ago, with AJ and Zader. 27th episode of All Things TAC. This particular episode is being sponsored by DroneResponders.org. Fantastic partner to work with. They are completely free to join, so there's no cost to the membership. And once you get on as a member, you can then apply or just fill out a form for the TAC working group, in which we share all kinds of videos, everything from AJ's great videos from the TAC Syndicate, which my favorite ones are the ones that he starts with, "Hey, TAC fans," and wish he continue to do that. But we also have, different PDFs and best practices and ConOps and things to share. And of course, these live streams. So, shout out to Drone Responders for supporting this. And we're really happy to continue doing that. So I just want to get started by saying that we have two panelists, and what is the entire raison d'etre of the show? And I'm using French because one of them is Canadian, but we talked about that, and it's the wrong side of Canada, right? But anyways, the reason for this show is to kind of talk about how Canadian firefighters are using TAC and how US firefighters are using TAC. What are some of the distinctive same things that they do, and what are some of the differences they do? How easy is it to get into a department, and so on. So we're going to talk about all that today. I want to start off by introducing each of the folks here. AJ, I got to put this up. Thank you, AJ. All right, great. So we're going to first talk a little bit about Mike Lechleiter. If anybody, is in the TAC community, you know who he is. He is joining us from the Corona, California Fire Department. Mike is the UAS program manager, but also a firefighter and paramedic with over 20 years of service at the Corona Fire Department. Under his leadership, the drone program has grown from a limited use pilot initiative into a fully integrated operational tool, placing a UAS on every fire engine in the city and ensuring that all fire suppression personnel are trained in drone flight and deployment. Going beyond FAA Part 107 standards, they also require NIST evaluation criteria and ensuring that all fire suppression personnel are indeed trained properly. Here we go. Also, public agency COA operations. They have done a great job in making sure that all that happens. So a major focus of Mike's work has been integrating drones with the Android Team Awareness Kit, ATAK, bringing a new level of situational awareness to incident commanders and field crews. Michael also teaches ATAK and UAS operations to public safety agencies across the country, supporting departments looking to modernize their response capabilities. In addition to that, again, Mike is always available for any question about drones or TAC. He gives phenomenal presentations at the conferences that we have, and we look forward to the presentation he's going to start off with shortly. So welcome, Mike, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Colt. So Colt Christensen is a firefighter with Caledon Fire and Rescue in British Columbia, where he has served for the past 3 years in a structural department that regularly deploys on mutual aid assignments with British Columbia Wildfire Service and the regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen.
Okanagan-Similkameen. Yeah, that was a tough one.
Okanagan-Similkameen. Brilliant. Okay. In addition to his fire service role, Colt is a ski patroller with the Canadian Ski Patrol, operating out of the South Okanagan Boundary Zone at Apex Mountain Resort. His operational focus has increasingly centered on improving situational awareness and information flow in dynamic high-risk environments. Recognizing critical gaps in current wildfire response tools, particularly around offline functionality, real-time data sharing, and personal accountability, Colt has been actively working to integrate ATAK into field operations. He's acting as an early adopter and informal integrator. He's developed practical SOPs for wildland use, trained personnel across multiple agencies, and is building a system that enhances rapid intelligence sharing and crew tracking, which we know is so important. His work is driven by a focus on operational efficiency and safety, with the goal of ensuring crews have access to the information they need when and where they need it to make it faster and more informed decisions in the field. And I'd like to say that, having spoken with Colt a couple times before the show, his entire life has been kind of one of a mission of service and helping in many different ways, from mission work and construction in some impoverished communities. So good guy, Colt. You're a good egg, as we used to say to our Canadian buddies back in the day. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Zev.
All right. So before we begin, there is one noteworthy item I would like to bring up on the screen. Usually I like to talk about different things that are happening in the TAC world. And let's see here. Yeah, there we go. So it would appear that finally today, the TAC Product Center has indeed introduced a CivTAC version for children called TAC Kids. So now we know that they can be safe and, do all the weird things they do, but we kind of know where they are. So good going, TPC. We appreciate you for everything you do. All right. With that, because we have a very full show today, I'd like to ask Mike to jump into his presentation, what the Palisades Fire taught Corona Fire Department about mop-up, and then we'll open for questions from our viewers. So I am going to bring that slideshow up on the stage, and take it away, Mike.
All right, thanks, Ev. Yeah, so we're just over a year past the Palisades Fire. If you guys remember, that was in the early January in 2025, so a little over a year. And for kind of perspective, where the Palisades Fire is and where Corona Fire is, it's only about 75 miles away. So everything that influences that area influences Corona. So when we see a fire like the Palisades, we tend to really listen, and we want to learn the lessons and make sure that that doesn't happen in Corona. So I wanted to start out with a little bit of history of how that Palisades Fire started. It actually was originally a small fire that happened on New Year's morning. It was called the Lockman Fire. You guys, if you may have seen it in the news, maybe not, but it was actually an arsonist that started a small little fire. If you look at the screen here, the slides, the timeline, it was pretty much from ignition to extinguishment. They had it in just under 5 hours. So it kept it to about 5 to 8 acres, kind of in the grass there. And early in the morning, they were able to pretty much call it out. What really made it dangerous was that there was a known wind event coming. They kind of had this forecasted on January 6th. You can kind of see that there was this crazy wind event that was supposed to be coming. They're talking about multiple days of really strong winds. So we have out here in California, we call them the Santa Ana winds, and they're kind of those phone winds that you hear about. We expect typically anywhere from 50 to 70 mile an hour winds blowing for 3 to 5 days on end. So when you talk about that over an area that just had a fire, it's a really significant thing to keep in mind. So we know that there's this event coming. You add the fact that now, for the past 6 days after this fire, there were signs that, hey, you know what, maybe this fire wasn't completely out. There have been some reports of people saying, hey, we see some like smoke in the area, or we smell something that smells like maybe something is still burning. What really is a concern is that you've got now 5 days where this fire was left pretty much unchecked. Nobody went out again to verify that it was out. Nobody checked to make sure that everything was cold. We essentially had this ticking time bomb just waiting for the right conditions, which we knew were going to be coming. We had a weather report saying they're on the way. What that really led to afterward is the Palisades Fire. So this is kind of an infographic to really show you how impactful that fire was. So in the morning of January 7th, so only 7 days after that initial fire, is when someone called in and said, hey, this fire is getting going. We talked about it being wind driven, right? This whole thing was blown by winds that were pushing, excess of 70 miles an hour nonstop, like not just gusts, like it was a nonstop wall of fire coming across. When you look at some of the statistics there, by the time it was done, 23,000 acres burned, over 6,800 structures destroyed, and 12 people lost their lives. All because this was a holdover fire, basically a smoldering fire from a previous fire that started this thing. And to us, that is unacceptable. So what do we do in Corona to make sure that that doesn't happen for us? Well, not much longer, about 7 months later, we had a fire in the end of July. Out here in Southern California, it is 100 plus degrees. So Zev, if you can go and play that green fire. So I'm going to jump that back. So this is some of the footage that some of the passerbyers grabbed from this fire. So you can see that there's a decent amount of wind, and we get a good afternoon breeze rolling through Corona. We knew that this was going to be a wind-driven fire right up in the foothills where we have some houses against the freeways. It had the potential for a lot of areas. So this kind of shot here shows, after our initial attack, we've got pretty much the fire contained. It's knocked out. You see the area, but what you can really notice is there's a lot of thick vegetation still within that perimeter that hasn't burned. And for us, that is a huge potential for reignition. So Zev, you can jump back to the slideshow there. So when this fire broke out, we were fortunate that we have an air base nearby, an airport that runs California's FIRIS program. They have one of the aircraft out there. So out here, FIRIS stands for Fire Integrated Real-Time Intel System. And the state of California has two of these aircraft throughout the state. They are 24-hour resources, and they are essentially out there with ISR capabilities for fire departments, for any type of incident where it's needed. And for us, these guys were actually already in the air. They had just taken off moments before this fire kicked off, and they were headed out to a fire on the east side of our county. They saw this smoke coming up, quickly turned around, and they were able to fly our incident. Now, and I'm going to show you what this kind of intel looks like for us. So Zev, you can play the FMV downlink video. All right, so they have these this camera pod on the front of their aircraft that's got both EO and IR, and we have the ability to grab this and bring it into TAC. So this is some of that actual footage they were shooting of that fire in IR, and you can see on the map that because they have the proper geospatial data brought into their camera system, brought into their aircraft, we see where all this is happening in real time on the map.
I got to ask you a question. Sorry, Mike. I got to ask you a question. Is this fairly easy to do? Is this native, or is this an add-on application that makes this happen? Because this is brilliant.
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of both. So they have all this integrated into their video feeds. We use a little bit of back-end magic to take a private link that they publish and push it into the COT message coming in so that the video player comes up whenever that COT marker shows up.
Brilliant. Okay, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no additional plugins needed. If the data's there, TAC recognizes it and shows where it is.
Brilliant.
All right, I'm going to have you jump back into the slides for me. So one of the other things other than video that they give is FIRIS creates these perimeter maps that they publish out, and they publish them out as KML network links. So we have the ability, we reach out, grab these links, and within about minutes of flying. So I think this one, from the time they flew to the time this perimeter was published, we showed that it was about 20 minutes. So within 20 minutes, you can kind of see in green there, like we have where their infrared flights show the fire area. Now, this is great because it helps us kind of determine like where things are, where we need to put our resources, and what maybe some of the threats might be. So we now have our fire out, and we've realized that what we need to do is figure out a way to follow up with this. Like the fire's out, what really burned. And where we start going with this is we know that we have the ability to make maps. We have drones. So we thought, you know what? We need to fly this. We need a way to process all this information and figure out what has burned, what hasn't burned, and what is still burning, even though maybe we can't see it. So we found a way to take those perimeters and start off by creating a flight mission, right? The very first thing we have to do is, we have to take those drones that we talked about. Every fire engine has a DJI Mavic 3 thermal. And how do we take those drones and create a flight mission out of what we see? So I'm going to have you start that video that says mission sample. So I built a custom program, using AI. It was able to help me build a program to where I can take a polygon that I free draw in TAC. So I'm just kind of taking a big area around that entire fire's perimeter. I'm going to export this file. So I've got that polygon. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I just want to export it as a KML. I'm going to select it, give it a very simple name. Cool thing about TAC is it always puts it into an export file. So I created this standalone app, which I can then bring that file in. I'm going to give it a simple mission name just because, I like keeping things named instead of numbers and things that don't make sense to me. I like putting it right back into those exports because I know that's kind of like a compartment where everything lives. And then I can select my mission. Like I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I want this flown at 400 feet AGL in IR. Cool thing is then I can jump back into the, or kind of jump back here. So if I jump back in, when it's done, it pops open. It asks, pop open DJI Pilot 2, which is the native app that, DJI uses. It's really good at creating mapping missions, but if you've ever dealt with it, it's a pain in the butt to set up all the parameters. So this really streamlines that. So I have it set to where it automatically launches. You can open up a flight route and now just import right into that same export folder, because you can see there it is, green fire. And now bringing it in, you'll see that it has automatically stitched together a flight plan based on that perimeter that I've drawn, the presets that I've already pre-programmed in, the fact that it is going to be an infrared, it is at 400 feet, and I've kind of maximized the overlap parameters that the mapping program that we use wants. So like they've kind of said, hey, here's, if you can build it this way, these are the best ways. So I was able to do that all on the back end. Stuff that you never even see happening is what it's doing on the back end. And then I'll just kind of go through here and you'll kind of be able to see the confirmed stuff there that, yep, it is already selected that it is the Mavic 3 thermal version. It is running the infrared already. I have it set to 400 feet. It's maximum speed, and it is just basically ready to run. All I have to do at this point is just hit the play button. So I'm going to jump back to the slideshow.
And by the way, can you work with or make modifications to that flight plan to maybe make it, only 10 back and forths, or can you make it, as opposed to a perfect square when it turns around, more of a curved one?
Absolutely. So at this point here, right now it's just filling in the perimeter. But if I jump back, I'm going to kind of jump this video. So at this point, everything is still editable. Like if it's like, you know what, I'm looking at this, it's not quite right. It is still editable within the DJI app. At any point, I can grab any one of these little white cursor legs that you see there, redraw the map. I can change the course angle, change the overlap. Just know that the way that it's built here is the way that the mapping software, the interpreter that I'll talk about next, that's the way that they like it for best results.
Brilliant. And the reason I'm asking those kind of questions because, most of us understand TAC, some of us understand fire, but you really understand TAC, fire, and drones, and you can kind of let us all know that those types of operations are available. So thank you.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely. So we take our final outputs, and what do we do with it? Well, we brought it into a software that's out there that's called Nova. And what Nova does is they have the ability to bring some AI into those IR pixels. So they start looking at every single image on, that is brought in, both geospatially. They're looking at the IR signatures coming out of every pixel. And they're running a lot of algorithms on the back end. So they're not just looking at heat. They're looking at difference in heat between adjacent pixels, and they're trying to basically pick up that luminosity and decide like where is maybe an active hotspot really living and beyond just what we can see visually, what we can feel, or what our instincts say that, hey, there might be fire here. We're bringing that intelligence into it. So what Nova does is it takes all of that data and it is able to stitch together both a visual map, but also a heat map. So you can kind of see a rough diagram here. You see all these little red dots is what it's saying that, hey, there is still a lot of heat here and there's potential for reignition or fire to regrow in these areas. Now, this was taken, I want to say it was like 9 o'clock at night. Well, I'm probably at least 6 hours after the fire was, put out by our ground crews. So this is still some significant lingering heat. Now, the great thing about Nova is it doesn't just give me a nice, pretty little map with a couple dots on it. It gives it as a KML that can be exported directly back into ATAC. Yeah. To me, that is actionable intelligence. It's not just, hey, there's a pretty map. It's like, nope, you go here. Here's a dot on the map where there is a problem that needs to be addressed. So we're able to grab that. We're able to send that out to all of our resources, let them kind of see, hey, here's the areas that need some work. And one of the things that I noticed, like you kind of see, I changed the layers on this one. Those green polygons that you see kind of grabbed around a bunch of those, that was what came from FIRUS. That was them saying, yep, in our overhead flight with that manned aircraft, here's where our spots were. But you see this little spot that's kind of in that purple box, that wasn't there on FIRUS, but I had a couple dots coming in from Nova. And kind of thought, that's strange. It doesn't look like there's anything there. We don't really see anything. We kind of looked at the orthomosaic that was generated and didn't really see anything. So we sent some crews out there and said, hey, can you guys check that out? And, sure enough, they said, yeah, there was actually some smoldering embers down there, some stuff that had gotten under some of the duff, some into the roots. And sure enough, that was an actual hot spot that was undetected by the FIRUS aircraft. So like I said, we sent this out to our crews, and this is what our crews sent back to us without any prompting. They were able to kind of draw these areas and say, hey, you know what? We went out and checked out some of these areas. We mopped up this area. They were kind of showing us in real time what their status was of how they were handling all of these hotspots, which was, talk about something awesome, getting that true feedback from the crews, like in real time. So if you're at the incident command and you're kind of looking at this area of, I have this area that I need to know it got taken care of. How do I get those checks and balances? Say, yep, this is done. Where's my accountability? These guys were simply drawing polygons saying, yep, this area is done, and sent it back to command. Kind of gave us those check-ins. So 72 hours later, after all this targeted mop-up, we flew it again. And this is the polygon that was generated, or these little hotspots of what came back out from Nova. So the next day, we sent our crews out, hey, can you guys check these few little dots that are out there? And pretty much every one of them got checked. And they said, hey, you know what? All these areas, they correspond to like some large rocky areas that have probably been sitting in the sun all day. Remember, this is sitting in July in Southern California. So those big rock faces were cooking all day long, holding on to some heat. So ultimately, we were able to confirm that, yes, like this fire is out. And not only is it out, we have data to support that this fire is out. Talk about the amount of relief it gives to our commanders that are out there, our battalion chiefs running the incident, to know that the risk of reignition, especially if you look at the bottom of that little map right there, those are all houses. Like this was right against a bunch of track houses that, we had a fire several years ago, the freeway fire, just on the other side of this freeway where we lost multiple homes. Again, a fire in Santa Ana wind conditions that blew right through the homes in that area. So it was definitely a comforting thing to know that not only did our guys say it was out, the data was showing that it's out. So that is how we took the lessons from the Palisades fire and made it so that it's not something that's going to happen in Corona.
Great presentation. And, I watched the one that you gave at CivTac 25, and what I learned, and I've never fought a fire in my life except maybe with a fire extinguisher, but at my home. But the sight, the touch, and the instinct, and you guys know what to look for, and it doesn't just have to be wisps of smoke. You know how something looks even without that. Touching it will give you temperature, and you'll know what it's made of, and could it reignite. But the instinct fluctuates between people, and having a tool like this, is a expansion. It's a instinct multiplier, shall I say. You could take a look at this and say, I didn't think there might be a problem, but now that I look at this, it definitely makes sense. So that was brilliant. If there are any questions from the viewers, now is the time to bring it up. There have been a couple that AJ has addressed for Richard Hingston. Tom Palmares from Belgium would like us all to come down there and help them learn how to fight fires, I guess. Anyway, he's an amazing guy, and we had him on once before. We're going to have him on again. He's also a drone instructor and a builder, and great guy. Okay, well, that was wonderful. I think if there are no questions, we're going to move on to Colt after he takes a little chug of his coffee there. So Colt is relatively new to the TAC world. I'd say probably just about a year, and he has a great story to tell. So I guess let's start with, when did you start using TAC? When did you learn about it? And how did you get on your track with getting on a server and learning how to do it correctly, Colt?
Yeah, so I've known about TAC for, I want to say, a decade now, and I had known of its uses in the military, and then just in the last couple of years, I found out that same application was being used with wildfire. And so at the beginning of last year, I just started gathering data. So when on my first deployment in the springtime, we had all these little data points, I guess, that that I ended up gathering them, but we didn't have a system where we would write down this information. It was just, go get eyes on, and
and it was conveyed to each other through radio, or
through radio, through face-to-face, through, sometimes we would have a map that we could use. We could use Avenza to draw, but that was the extent of that.
So you heard about TAC and you're like, oh my God, this may work great.
Well, yeah, I was playing around with it a year prior to this, but just using it with myself, and I'm sure everybody can relate. TAC is no fun when it's all by yourself. So I took it out hiking and, dropped breadcrumbs while I, went for a hike. Like it was, and just familiarize myself with the point dropper and all the functions that I could. Keep in mind, this is also ITAC. I didn't get going with ATAC until the second half of last year. Mm-hmm. So once I got out there, I just started writing everything down. Anything that I thought would be relevant or good to know, whether it was a bladder location, whether it was a pump location, what the structure protection designation was per property, just anything, so that we could just look at this device and say, yes, I can, you can see everything there. I even wrote down, because the area was evacuated, but there were still pets and livestock. So I even wrote down, there are 2 dogs at this site. So if we ever have...
How did that get you to the ultimate groundbreaking, lightning strike of meeting the community through Kevin Soffen?
So that was after I got back from that deployment, and I think I joined the Discord page first, the TAC Discord page, and then I started to hear about the community, and then it was Kevin Soffen's Smart Firefighting. I would say last June, maybe July
Mhm.
or so. And yeah, there was an incredible panel of people just talking about how it's being used in the firefighting space. So
And what was your initial addition to that panel that, as a new guy who sees a benefit and wants to bring it in, what was your biggest question to proceed with that?
yeah, well, I was dying for it. I'm really glad that they opened it up for Q&A, because these were all the guys I wanted to talk to. Like, these guys were, in the later stages of their careers, right? They're in command roles. And so what I had asked was like, okay, so you buy into this, but from where I'm at as a nozzleman, which is backseat of the truck, you know what I mean? Like, you typically don't see a nozzleman talking to any form of leadership, right? So I
And the
just
novelman is not a term used in the U.S. That would be our first differentiator, right, Mike? What do you call them here when you're just starting out?
There's several terms, but all the way down to backwards facing window liquor. But
rookie.
I watched. What is that? The Cal Fire show that we always joke about. The guy Bodie. Didn't they call them probies in that show? Wasn't that a big one?
Yeah. Typically a probie is someone who's on their first year on the job. But like you said, there's a lot of departments that the back seat and the front seat usually have a pretty big disconnect. But fortunately, we're not in that realm, especially those that are in the innovation side. We try to break that norm.
Right. Okay. So here you were a backseat guy. How do you move forward? And then a person came in and kind of saved the day. Who was that? And tell us.
And I met AJ.
Yes.
Yeah, done. AJ, like he was, I think, the first one to respond to the question, and his words were like, "Hey man, we have all been in that spot. Everyone here understands what it's like to see something like this, see the value that it has, and then just wonder how are we going to reach adoption." And
And the cool thing about AJ is that he is always available. He shows up when you most need him, and you don't think he's going to be around, and then bam, he just comes up. So AJ's
there he is.
Like magic. Call that FM.
I was hoping you were going to do that too.
Well, we got to keep you honest in your conversation here. So, AJ, thank you for joining us. Hopefully, I started writing some comments and responses, so we appreciate that. All right, so we're gonna get back to Colt, and I'll jump in on stuff. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got onto the server the first time, and what advice did you get for ConOps you need to develop and how you should best use it?
Yeah. Well, AJ, I think we connected right away. I had to make a LinkedIn account just to talk to you on there, and then connected over Slack, and then over on Signal, and we were just chatting back and forth. I was ringing his phone, quite a bit, asking him questions, and within, I think, about a week, he set us up on the FireTac server with 20 user accounts, and he's like, "Go break shit." And so that's when, we got rolling there. So he
gave you a specific curriculum to do, right?
No.
What did he tell you to do?
No, actually, no. Yeah, the Google Drive, and he's like, "Go watch everything on Tax Syndicate." So that's what I did. Just went through video after video after video after video.
Right.
And same thing with the Google Drive there, and then it was about, I want to say, a month and a half later where we got another deployment, and this was like game time. Now, I can take everything that I learned from the first deployment, and then also picked up an Android phone over the summer, so I was actually able to do this on TAC, and then hit the ground running. I had pretty much, I want to say, 95% of the data points in by the third day, after we were, just going around the area doing our tactical patrol. And then to go back to your question there, when I think one of the best things that AJ's done for my own personal like development with TAC, but also for what we're still testing this out, right? We're still gathering data. There's no like written SOP for this. We are still gathering that and disseminating it and figuring out what we're going to do better on the next one. But I asked AJ, oh, how do you guys use this? You know, like, what do you guys use for data points? What do you mark? And I don't know how to say this because AJ, you didn't answer me, but
I'll tell you what you told
back in my
I'll tell
court.
you what
and
you
you're
told
like,
me.
yeah. Well, you would
told,
ask.
You told me that he said, let me see here. I actually wrote this down. AJ responded by shifting the question back in your court, advising you to look around and decide what you think about which data points to collect are most relevant and make it a blank slate.
Yes. And that was incredible because I didn't like, all right, I got this checklist. Now I got to go make sure I got this in. Okay, check. Got this in, check. Got this in, check. Instead, I just kept looking for 2 weeks straight. What else? And when we had the second deployment, most of that I was able to figure out. And then I think we had a call while I was on the side of the highway and he mentioned geofences. And that just took it the next level there. What is everything that we can do with geofences? And that's partnering up with this. I don't know if it's the same resource that you use in the States, but that ERGC guide, the emergency, where you can, let's see, ERG. So you can search the sign, like the chemical signs for transport or propane tanks or whatever like that. And you can actually get, safe distances. So if it's windy or something like that, you need to be this far away. And so then that led to, let's mark propane tanks with a geofence. So if any crews are coming into an area that may, be in this blast area, they're getting notified the minute that they're walking into that high risk area. So
I want to ask you one more question. Then we're going to go to AJ for a minute. But so when you're talking about all these markings that you're making, I kind of lost. There's a gap in you're using it. How about your mates? How about your buddies? How about your teammates? How many of them are using it? How did they adopt it? How did they fund their EUDs? And and so let's answer that, and then we'll go to AJ, and then we'll come back to you about command and so on. But yeah, tell us about that. How did they spend their own money and get involved?
They didn't. I'm the only one crazy enough to have done that. So a lot of it was, hey, what phone do you have? And if it was an iPhone, my first mistake was getting them on iTac. But then I figured out TacAware, and that was a more reliable. So then if they had an iPhone, hey, download this app, TacAware. If they had an Android, I said, okay, you get to have a lot of fun. And then I showed them ATAC. And then I just went to that login, recycled those 20 logins, and it was one a day. And we finally got to, like, on the 6th day, I think we had a device running live in every single truck. So we could be able to see, where all 5 different crews were. And that was just off their personal phone. That was just, we had these other apps that we had to use anyway. So they were accustomed already to using their own personal phones
and they were able to see your geofences and other things that you've marked. And now that's the baseline of getting everybody on the same page. Meanwhile, command hasn't said, yeah, definitely use this, or let's use it like this. And I know you've got 2, applications that you use, Avenza and Survey 123. Are either of those TAC integrated, or can they be? Or is it the AND kit when you're using those? Is that how TAC shows up?
Yeah, it's the AND kit, and that was also a very helpful piece of advice that AJ had given me while I was on deployment, because I'm asking him, like, do I need to learn how to, like, design TAC plugins so that I can, create this, so I can show that it's all under one roof. And he's like, no, just look at it as the AND kit. And then, in further conversations, this term that we're trying to coin, rapid intel sharing, that's what's providing that AND factor. You can see where your whole team is, and you can rapid share any information that you might need.
Love it. I'm going to go to AJ now. So AJ, you've obviously know the story, and you've heard the steps. My first question to you is, when you told me about Colt, you seemed very impressed in his enthusiasm and his acuity and being able to do it. Do you often find folks like Colt who are just starting at the beginning and really looking how to integrate it and the proper path to take?
Yeah, nothing excites me more than a newbie who's just like, what do I do now? Because I remember being there. I remember when I got the phone call from Todd Tuggle, who said, hey, I talked to this guy, Eric Aslan. He's talking about some app. I don't have an Android phone. I don't know what this guy's talking about, but I gave him your phone number. And I remember talking to Eric and just being so enamored. I'd never seen TAC in my life, but just the way he described it, that drove me to the closest Walmart when I got off shift that night on a fire and buying an Android tablet and learning TAC. And it's changed, obviously, my professional life for sure. But I've made many good friends. I love this community, meeting Colt. So I remember that like excitement. And of course, that was 8 years ago. And now a lot of things happen with TAC. I've learned a lot more. And so to be able to take someone like Colt and be like, hey, watch all these videos, hop on this TAC server and go out and get it. And then hopping in there a few days later and just looking at his data sync feed and going, oh my God. This kid gets it. I'm sorry to call you a kid, Colt, but I was just so impressed. And like you said, I would look at some of these markers and knew they had attachments and pictures of where like propane tanks were and notes. And yeah, there's livestock here. These people have evacuated. These people haven't. There's two, an adult female, adult male, and 2 kids here. Like those sort of like attributes that were attached to the markers, I was just super impressed. It was probably, I would say it's like, if I had to take like a snapshot of how to do it, I would use that example on a wildfire of using DataSync.
Wow, that's pretty heady. Well, I don't know if you know this, AJ, but in talking to Colt, I found out that he was a lead guitarist, which, the rest of the band either doesn't like, but certainly looks toward in leading the way, right? So what would your advice be for a lead guitarist, not the chord guy, but the lead guitarist, leading that charge of bringing TAC in and getting command to look at it and understanding its use as the AND kit? He's very respectful. I mean, in talking to him about his command and all that, he really values their advice and the way they've done things and the applications they've used. He certainly doesn't want to appear like he's doing that. What is the best way that you would suggest for the next part of his track?
Well, I think it's elevating, right? It's proving that you could still do this and do these other things at the same time, right? So you didn't screw up any additional workflows. That you were able to do both and switch apps and still maintain, use all the things in TAC that are really cool and still, there's nothing wrong with Esri or Survey 123 or Field Maps. It has a spot in Wildfire, but it is not a rapid intel communication tool. It is much more of a data collection and analytics tool. And those are 2 things. Can you glean situational awareness from both? Absolutely. But TAC is much more rapid, like the chat feature in there, right? The radio is too busy, but how do I communicate with the rest of my strike team about where we need to go? Having that ability in TAC is huge with the chat function, and then just quickly dropping a route of where we're going or a marker of where we need to go, like that sort of stuff. In critical moments, that is what TAC was really built for. So I think it's important to show the pros and cons of each, application, show that we can use both, and that depending on what you're trying to do, just use the appropriate app at the time. I tell people this all the time. There's no silver bullet. I have a Home Depot and a Lowe's app. I just don't have one, home improvement store app that rules them all. I have to use the one depending on which one I'm using, or where I'm going. So I think that's one thing, is the and kit, that you can still use both, and that you're not saying because you're using one, we're going to diss the other one. I will say that probably Avenza is probably on its, I don't see a lot of utility there left with Avenza, and they shocked the wildfire community, 15 years ago or whatever that was when that came out. That was like an earth-shattering thing. I was like, wow, I can take our operations map and drop it on a map and see where I'm at, annotate it, and then share that data, to other users via email or a text, or bring that KML data. But now with what TAC has, I really don't see a whole lot of utility there. But Esri stuff is not going anywhere. There's a use case for that, for more for data collection. So with all that to say, you have to show where the strengths are for both programs, maybe where some overlap is, and that you can use both, and that it does not disrupt your workflows.
Yeah.
Because the GIS community is going to say, no, we're not using TAC, and I don't blame them. If I was a GIS person, I would say, no, I'm not going to transform all this data. I'm going to say, go collect this, but understanding, when to use, each tool.
So your comment about expediency and the hasty manner with which information can be shared. I spent a lot of time talking to those who are going to be hosting FIFA events and what that CUAS, or the counter drone, the detection, and that whole line is going to look like. And one particular state agency at the stadium that they're going to be, basically running, they've actually given a point and a label to each one of the poles, the light poles, because the last thing you want to do is say, yeah, I'm over on the west side, I'm like 4 parking lanes in, whatever. Now each one of those light poles are a skittle on TAC, and you can exactly say where you are, and people can get there more quickly. That to me is huge, that you can't do with anything else. So Mike, do you have anything to add to what AJ has been talking about?
No, I think just one of the things that he mentioned earlier, like, I think the best way you're going to find out how TAC will work for you is you got to use our favorite term. You just got to FAFO. you got to go out there, and you got to find out what works for you, and you got to find out what doesn't work for you, because you'll find out very quickly. There is such thing as information overload. You put too many dots on the map, and now you've got too much stuff cluttering, and you can't figure out where to focus. So you definitely got to find that balance of what works for you.
That's actually the name of our test data sync channel, is FAFO. That's hilarious.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, you had talked about a situation where you might have had one of your teammates have to go a couple kilometers out to get connectivity, and having him out there without knowing exactly where he was a concern to you, and that TAC could solve that problem. That would be one immediate problem to solve, to know exactly where he is at any given time. What other wins have you had to show to your teammates and to command that TAC gives you right off the bat?
I think we've had a couple moments where we've just been in a cell dead spot, and with one of our applications, you need to be refreshing it, to be able to get that information on the property there. So it got to the point where my engine boss is in the front doing this with his phone, and he's like, hey, do the thing with the app. Tell me where we are next. What's that, right? Being able to give him that information, that didn't happen for like 10 days. It was just gather more information. But when it did fail, I had all this information on TAC, regardless of the fact that we had a connection or not. And yeah, I was able to provide that. One of the coolest stories that I think that sometimes, with when on the subject of like adoption, you think that, oh, this is going to be really hard with a certain, older demographic of people who, don't know how to turn their AirDrop on just yet. And this is exactly what happened. I was helping this guy using like basic functions of his iPhone just to, but I got TAC aware on his phone, and we were transmitting live, and we were doing these, I think we were doing pump checks, and we had these roads where they were so tiny that, and we're talking like a couple kilometers too. So backing up, if you happen to, come up on another truck, you wouldn't be able to get around. And this guy was so jazzed that he could look on his phone and see that there was another truck coming down the road. And that was like he's like, whoa, this is the coolest thing in the world, right? Just being able to see if there's another truck. So he didn't have to back up 1.5 kilometers in a really bad spot. So the buy-in was just, it was everywhere with every demographic at, little moments throughout the both deployments. So yeah, it was really cool.
One of the things we talked about before the show about your experience, and I think this is worthy of sharing with anybody who's, trying to show the benefit or the value proposition of TAC in addition to what they're already using. You told me that you wanted to solve the same problems that the tools of your agencies were able to up to speed on, and then solve the problem using TAC. This allowed you to continue to be of service no matter where the openness was to exploring solutions outside your current means. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that's of benefit to you?
One thing that, like, and I've said this to you, Zev, like, I believe that it is inevitable that this will be implemented, but how fast depends on how stoked some people are and how not pissed off they are. So coming in, I didn't come with this and be like, oh yeah, guys, guess what? You're all doing like, no, I became a subject matter expert in Avenza and Survey 123. And then my job, which was a nozzleman, which carrying tools, chalk and wheels and everything like that, I made sure that was like flawless. But the thing is, I'm also sitting in the back seat while we drive everywhere. So yeah, hop over to TAC. All right. Now how this issue that we just, figured out here, if we were just solely using TAC, how would we do it? And that's where a lot of this data was just other problems that no fault to Survey 123 or Avenza. This stuff just happens. But I was obviously getting up to speed on some of these things that could happen in a setting like that, and then what we could do, or what would be cooler, or what would be possibly better. And that's all it was. Like, it was just, but I had to make sure. And yeah, at times, my technological experience was helping guys turn AirDrop on their phones and import maps into Avenza. And I did that, right? And meanwhile, I'm still holding this super device, in my hand, and I'm like, it gets better. These guys are stoked about, this. And but I wanted it to happen organically and naturally, and I didn't want it to like you said. And I also got good feedback too from a task force leader who had said, like, that was going
to be my next question. So I wanted to add that you actually went out and got your own Starlink Mini, right?
Yeah.
In order to have some connectivity. But I want Mike and AJ to pipe in on that. And then also, if you could, in rapid time, because we have about 5 minutes left, talk about your experience with Kirk and Dan, and how that might have been a good step up, and let Mike and AJ comment on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that with having T-Mobile out here in the States, them being able to push cellular over Starlink, we have pretty much found like they've actually made it to where TAC is an approved data transfer element to run through that cellular over satellite. So if you are a TAC client, your data, all your PLI, position location information, will transfer right over that Starlink. AJ and I did a test out in our local area where we know we have some significant connectivity issues, and I've got T-Mobile with the TSAT on it, and I was able to maintain connection right to that TAC server pretty much every time that we had FirstNet on another one. Sitting there saying, nope, there's nothing. Verizon on another one, nope, I've got nothing, but I'm still there on TSAT. In a canyon, showing I see the dots moving. So that was kind of very almost much of a relief to have that kind of connectivity.
For sure. Can you tell us the stories about the two fellas that you were talking about, gathering every data point, airdrops, and so on? Is that something you can talk about too?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my first task force leader, he's my hero firefighter. He was a smoke jumper, and this I remember him telling me, he's like, I remember the day we got our first GPS. AJ, you think you said something similar to this, but these guys fought fires with map and compass, and still like he could read the weather. He could read fire behavior like I've never seen before. It was kind of eerie and super cool getting to watch him and learn from him, but he didn't know how to use like his iPhone for much. And so I was just kind of showing him little things. And the big ding, ding, ding was when I showed him how to send, how you can send a pin or send your current location through iMessage. So I had shown him how to do that. And so I think he was on a property, and he sends me this pin. I get this pin through a text message, and he said, go fill this bladder. And then he was a couple minutes later, sends me another pin. Go do this, go do this. And then he's like, haha, this is fun. And I'm like, yeah, because what this translates to is if your TFL is ripping down the road in an active setting, there was no fire at this time. We were at the tail end of it. But hey, engine 305, spot fire here. Then he's going to the next one. He's not waiting there till the truck gets there. He can keep moving. And this is that benefit of this rapid intel sharing. So I thought that was huge because my TFL, who doesn't like phones, he liked that feature. And I know that if it was shown in a way where it's like, this can make your life easier or your job, more efficient, he'd be stoked on that. And then second deployment, we had a lot of I can't say enough good things about Dan, honestly, because I think he really showed me leadership in this setting and the way he handled a lot of these. And he was super receptive. I just walked, day 3, day 4, maybe he was sitting alone at the mess hall having dinner. And I just walked up cold turkey and was like, hey, can I show you something? And he was super receptive to it. He brought up some concerns about security and things like that. But one of the things that he had said was, in a lot of cases, we get what the military is doing, but years later. And, it takes a long time for this to trickle down. And so being able to come back and then through even this is just in the last couple months, after AJ introduced me to Cole with Vexel, who him and his team created the disaster field system, which is just expanding everything. It's got ISR, heat mapping, TAC, EUD, bunker supply, the whole 9 yards. It's all there. It's like there's nothing to build. I made a joke about it. I was like, I'm kind of sad. I'm going to miss those days calling AJ on the side of the highway and being like, how do I turn this thing on? But and security was one of those ones. So knowing that there are systems that are addressing this. And then the other thing that he had said too was just, the time to bring this up to our higher command was not in the middle of an event. And so went back to work, right? Okay, well, I'm still going to, gather data points, but we're not talking. So I bit my lip. I didn't say anything. And we wrapped it up. And then, so yeah, still.
Good deal. AJ and Mike both, throughout this program, we've talked about different things in Canada and here. Do you see any distinctions about things that we do over here that they don't do over there, or vice versa? Anything you would share and say, hey, we can learn from that, or we can teach them that? I want to kind of get into that discussion a little bit.
I think at the Canadian government level, they are ahead of us with bringing TAC out, from the government standpoint, like at the highest levels. That is in their plan. So they already, of course, do that on their defense side. But there's plans to bring this from the government. So imagine in the United States side, like DHS bringing this to every first responder as kind of a foundation for interoperability. So if your state didn't have a TAC program, you're not in Colorado, you're not in Texas, then you knew you could have a foundation to get on TAC. And that is part of their plan in Canada. And they're, it's not rolled out yet. Based on their cloud TAC model. So that idea to bring that from the defense over to the civilian side is huge. So they're ahead of us there. That's already in the planning. It's something I'm trying to champion here in the United States, and wave the flag and say, hey, guess what? We don't have a plan for national interoperability. Wouldn't it be cool if we did? This doesn't replace any state programs. It could be a means for building Fed hubs to bring states together, like the United States government. The federal government manages that. But that's where I think they're definitely ahead. Those talks are already happening there, and they've already kind of got this built out. I know we can do it here. It's just going to take some vision and someone at the White House level to say, yes, we should do this.
So my fellow in Canada that is championing this is Martin Simard. Is that the right name? And isn't it TAC Public Safety's mission to do exactly that? I think I've listened to Michelle Duquette pontificate about that, about how interoperability is the key. But isn't that what TAC Public Safety is geared up to do? And do you know who to advocate to about that?
Well, the nonprofit is a couple things. Advocacy being number one. So, and then bringing people together and showing them best practices. We are not going to manage the server for the federal government at all. That's not the goal of TAC Public Safety, is to fund certain initiatives and do some in-house stuff, fund some in-house initiatives. But if someone needed to get on a server immediately as a public safety entity, and we're not here to replace anybody doing TAC as a service. So that's a whole other business model. We're here to give people the ability to rapidly get on, kick the tires on it, and then go figure it out on their own if they need to get on their own server, however they do that. That's really what the nonprofit is stood up to do. Me personally, and through the nonprofit, the advocacy side is trying to get those right players up at the highest levels to pay attention and to help, and we can help them navigate like why this is a good idea. That's really, and we do that independently. We do that as our group. We stand up the CivTAC every year now. It'll be, back in DC this fall, the week before Thanksgiving. We'll be at the Crystal Gate Marriott, and that's a great spot, and that's why we do it in DC, is to hope to lure in some of those decision makers over at the White House to really to have them understand like really the impact they could have.
Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's the what he's saying is we got to get in front of the right people, and we have to overcome private industry who thinks that TAC is a competitor and not a companion. That's
see.
one of the big things right there. Is everyone's like, well, it's TAC is going to get rid of this. It's going to displace Esri. It's going to do all these other things. Like, no, it is a companion, not a replacement.
And I'm going to call out who I think is probably one of the most approachable, knowledgeable, and thoughtful person that I know at DHS, Steve Willoughby, who's heading up, counter UAS right now. He would be a great guy to start with, I think, because when he sees value in something, he will help you move forward with it. I've had that experience. So Steve Willoughby is probably one of the best guys that you could, I don't know, AJ, have you met him or?
He has my white paper.
He does. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
he has my white paper.
Have you
Yeah.
had the opportunity to meet with him at all, or Mike?
I have not, no.
Oh, you have not. Okay. So I know he was supposed to be at the Drone Responders National Conference 2 weeks ago, but something came up and he wasn't able to be there. But that's where I was going to try to plug him at that point. I remember it was almost 3 years ago that I was at another counter drone thing, and I ran at him after his panel carrying my laptop saying, I think we have what it is you're looking for. And that was my invitation to the the Eisenhower Executive Office building 2 months later to give that press. So he is open if you show something of value that makes sense. Okay. Well, that was great. That was really good. And last thing is anything about the difference in fighting fires, the difference in technology between Canada and US. I know you're just looking at one particular Novelman, but was there anything in there that either of you saw that was glaringly different? Or
There's more mosquitoes, lots more mosquitoes. But we also have a state north of them called Alaska, full of mosquitoes as well. Some people on Hot Shark Cruise United States fear going north because of it's just a different environment. And folks in the north fear coming south because it's hotter than hell. So, but at the end of the day, like, fire is fire. It is, a phenomenon that it doesn't matter where it is. There are some different ways we may use some different tools and some things. You guys wear funny boots and those funny helmets and face shields and stuff. But at the end of the day, the dynamics of, the fire triangle, the fire behavior triangle do not change. Fuel, heat, and oxygen control the fire.
Yeah.
the biggest fear I have going up there is the guys doing 90 miles an hour on their snowmobiles drinking Grey Goose. But other than that,
I love, I grew up, in the time of the Great White North, if you know that movie.
Take off, you hoser. Take off.
Hose heads and all that stuff. So I have a great respect for Canada. I never got to fight fire up there, but I know we send people, into Canada on a Hot Shark cruise, and I know they come down here too when we're really getting hammered in PL5. So, but yeah, I'm cold. I would say, like, there's not a whole lot of difference, right? I mean, you guys cut line, we cut line. You guys backfire, we backfire. There may be some nuances. They have a lot of water, so when he talks about these pumps, they use a lot of portable pumps. They have a lot of water. Think of, you go up to Minnesota and you just go north. They've got water, look on Google Earth, there's water everywhere. Or down here, static water supplies for me aren't just around the corner to just go drop a pump or go draft. Just not, I would say that's just a geography thing. There's parts of the United States that are like that, but a lot of Canada is covered in water.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys,
there's lots of mosquitoes. That's why the mosquitoes are there. There's lots of water.
Wow.
Well, this was a great episode. I really appreciate you all for coming on. It was fun. A lot of comments in there. We can look up after the fact an answer, although AJ and Mike have both been on top of it while they're talking. So you guys definitely know how to multitask. Appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to end. And mosquito plug-in. I love that. Great way to end it. All right. I'm going to end and ask you fellas to stay on just for a moment. Thank you to all our viewers, and we'll see you in the next couple of weeks. We have a surprise guest. I will tell you as a tease that they're going to be opening a new challenge. For those who don't know, we had our second challenge about 3 weeks ago, where Connecticut State Troopers won for taking a GPS coordinate that I gave them, which turned out to be Whitey Bulger's original home, and they were able to set up an apprehension situation and so on. Jason Esterline from Help Now came in a close second with some really good support on medical and on supporting the entire operation. But this next one we're going to have is going to be sponsored by a great company that AJ kind of turned me on to. So I thank you for that. I don't want to give away the farm, but hopefully they'll be on in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll announce what the challenge is. And my God, the award is worth about 7 to 10 grand, and will really make firefighters and cops happy if they win. All right. So with that, thank you all again, and we'll see you next time.